Now, if you'll recall, in my previous videos about the Raspberry Pi, I was talking about how when you get a Raspberry Pi nowadays, you automatically get a free edition of Minecraft Pi, at least if you're not getting the light version of Raspberry Pi OS. So this is the official Minecraft Gamepedia wiki page, or maybe you could argue it's the unofficial wiki page for Minecraft Pi. This is a website. I guess this is the official website for real. We load it up here, but it doesn't have very much on it, so I'm not sure what the point is. We'll go back to the wiki. And there are several things that jumped out at me about it, about how there have been so many features stripped out of Minecraft Pi to make it lighter weight. And it's marketed more as a platform for experimentation than for gameplay. So they say the original alpha, I guess it was released in 2013. The latest version is beta 1.1. And as they say, Pi Edition never received any subsequent updates and is no longer updated. Despite this, it is included by default on Raspberry Pi OS. So it was added to Raspbian in 2014. They're saying discontinuation, but you can argue that maybe it's not really discontinued, it's just not being supported very well. Now, one of the things that it doesn't mention here is that it is possible to run the Java edition of Minecraft on the Raspberry Pi 4, which is, of course, the most powerful Raspberry Pi. It's not the one that I have, so I can't actually experiment with it at the moment. They're pointing out that the Pi Edition does include all blocks from the Pocket Edition 0.6.1 Alpha. And the Pocket Edition, if we're jumping over here, these are the features. Of course, it was only ever, I don't know if you could even call it a Alpha 6 if it's a 0.6.0. But that's what they're calling it. Now, the Pocket Edition, more generally, it should be noted, is not the Java. It's a newer version of Minecraft written in C++ that comes with Windows, although not necessarily with a license. And it used to come on the Windows Phone, or at least be available for it. You could run it on, I think you can still run it on Android. I shouldn't say it used to be you could run it on Android. You still can. And iOS, supposedly Kindle will run it. But it could be argued that it's really not anything quite like the Pi Edition. The Pi Edition is stripped down so much that it's written in C++, uses basically the same engine, but it's a arguably much more basic take on it. And there are some other issues with it too. Like, for example, if I can find it here. Okay, so it will only use the 256 by 256 by 128 block old worlds. And you can't change the skin of the player. And you can't sprint. There are no mobs, in other words, monsters or creatures that you run into, in spite of the fact that you have the sword and the bow. And these are the limited blocks and objects you get. One of the things not mentioned here is that the survival mode is not really supported. They say there is no survival mode by default. I've been able to get it to run, but it doesn't make any real sense, because there isn't anything to fight against. There's nothing really to kill you other than, as they're saying, if you fall into the void, you can die. And they're saying all mobs for Pocket Edition Alpha 0.6.1 are still in the game's code, but they can only be spawned by loading a Pocket Edition map with mods or by using a Nether reactor. So anyway, I think what all this means in the end, first we'll jump over to an example of how Raspberry Pi or the Raspberry Pi Foundation have a series of pages here, this project's raspberrypi.org page, about how you can experiment with code in the Raspberry Pi edition of Minecraft. So you can do interesting things. I'm interested in trying some of these things in the full version of Pocket Edition, or really Bedrock Edition, correction. That's the one I normally play on, where you can build very large objects through automation, so using a Python programming interface. So you can generate blocks, you can change blocks, you can generate very large objects, as you can see here, including very large blocks. One of the more extreme ones is you can generate this giant cube of TNT blocks, which can make a gigantic explosion, theoretically. Although explosions in Minecraft, as you can see here, are not too spectacular looking. They can do a lot of damage, but TNT in Minecraft is obviously nothing like TNT in real life. You run away just this far away, and you're safe, which in real life you would never be. But anyway, I'll do a very fast game in it, and as you'll see, there's not a whole lot you can actually do. But because I said I'd do it, I'll do it. So here's Minecraft Pi Edition, version 0.1.1. So this is actually, as I said it earlier, the only version they've released of this. I was hoping for an upgrade, but here I'm creating a world in this one and only ever Minecraft Pi Edition. And my understanding is, in line with what I was saying earlier, you don't actually get anything but the creative mode. And here I was running into some control issues. I solved this after activating the CPU temperature widget in Raspberry Pi OS to play it safe, basically. It occurred to me this would be a good idea, just in case this was heavier weight than they admitted to. But in any case, I ran into some control issues with the controls overreacting. I found the solution to this was to plug my mouse directly into the Raspberry Pi and to plug my keyboard directly into the Raspberry Pi, because previously I had just used VNC, and I'm taking this video with VNC. But once I had the keyboard in and the mouse in, it worked reasonably well. Some of this choppiness is probably more due to working through VNC and using Open Broadcaster than anything else. Now here I'm flying because it is creative mode. If you double click the spacebar, it'll let you fly, and this is not unique to Pi Edition. There's really not a whole lot you can do, unfortunately. You can't cook, you can't smelt, you can't craft, and there are no mobs or creatures. So it is a very much stripped down experimental release of Minecraft. But what I'm doing here is I'm going to build a house, because it is one of the things you can do. Sometimes people will build buildings in Pi Edition and then export them to other editions of Minecraft. I'm not sure if I see the point of that, but it's something that some people do. If I'm remembering right, you need an app for that, but the whole point of Pi Edition is that you can build a lot of Minecraft add-ons with it using Python and similar languages. It's designed to be very moddable, although really all of the Minecraft editions are pretty moddable, actually. So here I'm even having trouble measuring the size of my house and getting the dimensions right because I can't see the outlines of the blocks. Because, at least in Bedrock Edition, which I usually play, if you move your cursor over them, you can see their outlines in black, but you can't do that in Pi Edition from the look of it. But, I try to wing it here best I can, counting the blocks as I drop them, and somehow I lost count because, as you'll see, I wanted it to basically be 7 blocks across, and I thought only of the middle blocks, of the middle 5. Forgot the outer 2. So I basically screwed it up. So I had to add, an extra line of blocks over there on the right, because you can see the door is not centered. So the thing about the full versions like Java and Bedrock is that they give you a better sense of block spacing. You have to pay closer attention in Pi Edition. Basically, you get a lot less assistance. Although, one of the weird features is you don't have to jump to get over a wall or over a block. So as I'm getting on and off the works here, I'm not actually having to hit the spacebar to jump. It just automatically steps up my player onto the blocks. You can do the external view, or the third-person view, if that's the right word. But later on in the video, I think I have that somewhere. But okay, so my house is taking shape here. The roof was kind of a hard thing to decide about, whether I was going to put it all the way out to the edge. In the end, I decided to do that for aesthetic reasons. But I had to finish the walls first. Yeah, and if I were in Bedrock Edition doing this for an actual game, I would add windows. Some people have built fairly elaborate houses in Pi Edition, but there's a lot that you can't do. You can't build a fireplace, really. If you put a furnace in it, the furnace can't really smelt anything, and so on. So there's limited functionality, and it kind of limits what makes sense to put in a house, except for aesthetic reasons. So here I decided to use cobblestone for the roof, but I went through the other blocks first, because it's better, I think, aesthetically to use something other than cobblestone a lot of the time, like terracotta or whatever. But your bricks or rather blocks in Pi Edition are very limited. It's only the ones you see here. So it's really not ideal. In the end, I just settled on cobblestone. I've used it a lot for roofs in Minecraft games I've actually played, but this time I wanted to be fancier, and I couldn't be fancier. I had to just do what I so often do. Here I figured just to keep things straight, it'd be easier to do the ends first and the edges, and then fill it in. I think this is how I've done most of the roofs on houses I've built in Minecraft. Because see, they can then just run each of the parts of the roof across. You already have an outline if you do it this way. There aren't really any measuring tools other than the coordinates, if you keep the coordinates visible, as they are here. The measurements are simple, of course, because they're all in blocks, but there are, I think, a lot of CAD programs that still implement this better. Minecraft is only a game, of course. Alright, now for the interior of the house. There's, again, not a whole lot I can do. I could add lighting in the form of torches. And adding that stone or cobblestone edge gives me the freedom to put in these torches without it being horribly unrealistic. Some reasonable degree of fireproofing there. Then I figured I'd add a bed and a crafting table. So the beds are not very functional in Pi Edition either. Of course, I wanted to also put a door on it. I forgot that part. So I wanted to put a bed in the house. And the beds are not completely functional in Pi Edition. If you try to sleep in it, they remind you can only sleep at night, but I haven't seen a night cycle yet for Pi Edition. It might be that it doesn't have the day and night cycle. Then I put in a crafting table. And I wanted to see if they had added functionality for crafting Pi Edition, but as I have said before, it doesn't look like it. They haven't done any upgrades. So I decided to reload the world to see if that would help me at all. And still nothing. So then I go outside. After a few more desperate swipes at it there. And I'll build a furnace. I'll put the furnace there. And it will not even open for me to consider smelting it or cooking anything. And then I'm at a loss for what to do, so I take some TNT and move away from my construction site here. Now, there are people who have gotten the TNT to work in Pi Edition, but I'm presuming they had a Python script to do it with, because I was not able to find a flint and steel or anything else that could light it up in the available blocks here. You're very, very, very limited in what you can actually do. So I fiddled with it a bit, seeing if something was there that isn't there in the other editions. Like basically poking it with my sword here in the hopes of getting something out of it, but I tried a few things, but it didn't really work. So, thanks for watching. I hope this didn't bore you too much, but if you want to play Minecraft for real on a Raspberry Pi, you're probably better off with the Java edition running on a Raspberry Pi 4. Because then you get the full game. I mean, really the full game, because the Java edition is the best one by far. Thanks for watching.